but not mine. So again, this unit is all about statistics. Where did I printed a bunch of handouts. There they are. Look at me. I'll organize. Yeah, we'll go with that. So about statistics. So we are going to today carry on talking about how we gather statistics. And then the rest of the week we'll talk about how we analyze statistics.
All right.
No. Okay. Okay, so
you gonna do that while you teach? Oh, what's this? Oh, yeah, what's this?
okay. So we want to talk about surveying, and this, by the way, this is actually an important skill, which is to say, learning how to gather information in a meaningful and unbiased way is important. It's important for a lot of academic careers, right? If you go to school for sociology or psychology or science, then gathering survey data is important. But it's also lots of businesses. I remember when I used to work at a restaurant in a casino, we used to get survey data from them constantly, where they would ask the regular clientele all sorts of questions about the business there, and they would send us that information. It was very useful for us, so we would have a sense of what days were busy, what days were slow, which helped us with staffing and making money. But also just, I mean, you've probably been to a restaurant at some point in your life and seen even a really simple sort of surveying thing, which is what? You go to a restaurant, and the meal. The which?
They have like a rating system. It's a happy face and a frowny face.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's like for speed, cleanliness, service with a smile.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly right. I didn't know that. Yeah, that's exactly right. And often at restaurant, like at a restaurant where you have a waiter, what do you get? Awesome. Good luck. On my way. That's good. On your lap. Thank you. What about just our restaurant? What kind of rating system do we get? Yeah, you ever get like a comment card and hand these out at the end of the meal? You fill it out. It says like, who's your waiter? How did you enjoy your service, your food, this or that? Anyone seen that before?
I think everyone just feels about like good.
That was like a, no, go away, be gone. I don't. Yeah, this would you know. Thank you, but no.
I want to later.
They don't. No. Out you get. Thank you. And on the alternate side of it, there's even online services that do this, right? I don't know if anyone before you travel ever goes on TripAdvisor, Yelp, or anything like that, but I know that we used to survey our clientele at the restaurant I worked at, the winery, Ravine Winery, and we found, interestingly, one of the questions we'd ask is, how did you hear about us? If this is your first visit, we're a restaurant in the middle of nowhere, out in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and over 50% of people who said how they heard of us said they found us on TripAdvisor, right? So interestingly, an online site that does surveying end up being a big sort of business for us, which I found out by surveying. Kind of interesting, right? So anyway, it really is a valuable skill and something worth knowing. So on Friday of last week, we talked about sampling methods and where we get information like that. And we talked about the idea that sometimes we have to survey. We survey if our population is too big. What's a population again? What's a population? Yeah, all the people you want to know about, right? So if I'm owning a restaurant, then my population is people who might be eating in the Niagara region. That's my population, right? If we want to know something about students, it's all the students in the school. If I'm the government of Canada, then probably the population I'm thinking about is all of Canada, right? All of its citizens. When our population is too big, Everyone who might eat in the Niagara region, it's a big population. Be a lot of work to talk to all of them. Or all of Canada, big population, be too much work. When we have to do that, that's when we choose a sample. Does that make sense? What is a sample? Good. It's a small group within your population whom you are actually going to survey, whom you're actually going to observe, whom you're going to ask questions of. And we talked about the idea that not all sampling is made equal, right? A good sample is one that does what? Buddy, what do you think? Good survey, a good sample.
I don't know, I wasn't here Friday.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. Here or not here, you can still answer the question. If we're trying to get a good sample of a population, what would a good one look like?
No clue.
Okay, well, what might imagine that I am trying to survey people who might eat in Niagara Falls at my restaurant. What would a bad sample be? Who would the wrong people to ask be? Well, I would argue as a restaurant manager, they're the more important ones, actually. They're the ones whose opinion I really need to know. Yeah, little kids, right? They're probably not doing a lot of deciding to eat at restaurants that charge like $120 a person. So that's probably good people to avoid, right? 10-year-olds, not our primary source of business. Good. Who else? Should I pay for this like sample in Vancouver? Wouldn't make very much sense, right? They're really old, yeah, maybe that might be. Though, mind you, old people often have a lot of money to spend. Old people can be like restaurant gold. That's true, and they eat like this much. But still, the first restaurant I worked at was like an old folks' home every day from 3 to 5. All the old guys coming in for early dinner. But yeah, certainly I wouldn't want to just survey the elderly, right? We'd like to have a good mix. So a good sample is a good mix of everyone you're interested in. Right? Make sense? All right. So today, before I send you off to come up with your own questions and do your own surveying, we want to look at the different ways we can do sampling for surveying. Does that make sense? The different ways we can pick groups of people. So if we look here, this is just picking up on last week's note. I wanted you guys to have some class time to get work done on Friday, so I just gave you part of the note. This is the rest of it. The first sampling method we come across is called a convenience sample. What do you think that is? A convenience sample. Good. All right. So sampling the most easily accessible Okay, so sampling the most easily accessible portion of the population. Yeah, did I not give you one? Sorry. Sorry about that. There you go. That's, I didn't say take the note. I said be quiet. It's like me saying like, somebody, I phoned and asked them for a pizza and they're like, well, we'll get you a sub to you. That's not what I asked for, though I do love a sub. Okay. So, a convenient sample is just the most easily accessible. Tim, if I wanted to sample students at Eastdale, what would be a convenient sample for me to take? Yeah. Yeah, that could be the question, but what would a convenient sample be? The whole idea of a convenient sample is I'm not going to ask the whole school, I'm just going to ask some students. And if we're talking about the most easily accessible portion, I think Evan's spot on. I think, for example, surveying your own class. So if I wanted to know something about students at Eastdale, if I asked just you guys, That would be a convenient sample. It would be a sample that's nice and easy and close by. Is this a good sample or is it biased? What do you think? I don't think it does depend on whether I fed them or not, actually. What are you saying? Biased. Why do you say biased? I agree. So why is that a problem? Okay, you know each other, so that might be part of it. What else? You have this class, which tells me something about you, right? It tells me your age. It tells me that you're like not in the essential stream, right? It tells me that you're likely going to go to college, right? Seeing as you've bothered to take a college level math class, right? So that tells me that you might have like some career ambitions. Maybe it tells me that you already have a program in mind and you know you need this class, right? So you could have a very clear vision. So it tells me a lot of things about you that may not be true about everyone in the whole school, right? Okay, first of all, watch your language. Second of all,
Hello? Can I reach 30 seconds, please?
yeah, take 30 seconds outside.
No, not you. Are we talking to Ian?
It's biased because we're often grouped by demographics, right? Demographics. Wow, that's the worst spelling ever. I'm going to trust you to spell it right. We often group people by demographics. You in this class are all roughly the same age. You have similar academic interests, right? You have similar course load just by definition, which means that if I ask just you, I'm asking a select set of demographics inside the school, and I'm probably missing certain types of people. Am I getting people who want to be university mathematicians if I'm in this class? No, because they're in the U stream. On the other hand, am I going to get people who are in the workplace stream and don't plan to go to college? Probably not, right? Because again, they probably wouldn't be taking this class. So I missed some people. Does that make sense? All right. What do we have next? What kind of sample? Voluntary sample. What does this mean? What's a voluntary sample? So I'm doing a survey and I'm just going to take a voluntary sample. What do I do?
Survey people that like offer to.
That's right. That's right. So people have the option. And you survey those who say yes. Right, and a good example of this could be like comment cards at a restaurant. Right, they're available for everyone. But not everyone chooses to do them. Another example of this would be like telephone surveys, though they mix in other things. But an even better example, you know those like online surveys you might see on like Facebook or something, like click here and you can vote, cast your vote for whatever it may be. You know, CDC does top, you know, your favorite song of the week every week or things like that. But these are surveys where you can choose to engage and lots of people don't choose. And that's all they do to select people. They don't pick you in any way, shape, or form. They just throw it out to everybody and you say yes or no. Oh, really?
Yeah. They call it swag bugs.
So you could just go online and take surveys and make money, right? Wow. Sounds way better. And the big thing with this is it's available to anyone and everyone, right? Anyone can take it. Now, at Eastdale, how could I do a voluntary survey? What could I do to give a voluntary survey? Sorry? Okay, I could post posters saying like, hey, scan this QR code or go to this website or take one of these sheets and fill it out. Or come see me. What do? They just tick on it? Yeah, you could do that. Sure. Gentlemen, what do you think? How could I do a voluntary survey at Eastdale?
So, go to the gym, and you go, hey, who wants to take my survey? And they go, me.
Sure. Now that does miss a little part of that, which is,
Somebody just put a slip in the front desk. And
Oh,
then
you
take
can
it
say it on the
straight
PA system.
there we go. Yeah.
Does anybody want to take my survey?
Yeah.
They'll come to the library at lunch.
So we could use the announcements. Hey, take a survey. Definitely. I could also give homeroom teachers a survey. So I could print one up for every student in the school and give it to homeroom teachers and say, give these to students, ask them if they want to fill it out. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. It'd be a lot of work, a lot of paper, but I could do it. Or I could say, tell homeroom teachers, hey, if they're interested, go on the Eastdale website and there's a link to click, right? And I don't have to print a million copies. Or like we said, you could put a poster up. And you could even have it just tick on there. I'd be worried about that because you get some grade 9 kid who would just go add like 35 ticks to one thing because they're like that. There you go. What about voluntary surveying? Is this a good or a bad way to get a representative sample? What do we think? Is there bias in there? Let me go back to my former life because I used to spend hours a week thinking about this. If I give comment cards out at a restaurant, what kind of people will tend to fill them out? Okay, so definitely. People who have an awful experience will fill it out because they want to vent. They're angry and they want you to fix it. Oh, good. So definitely. Who else? People who really hated it.
Old people.
Who just have nothing better to do.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe. Fair enough. So people who really hated it, people with nothing better to do. And what other kind of person probably wants to fill in a comment card?
People are really
I feel like we've covered old people, though that's good. But I would say too, yeah, what's that?
People that really like
People who really loved it probably want to fill it. If you had a great experience, you're probably like, hey, you guys did great. Loved it. We got a lot of those. If you had a terrible experience, you're probably like, man, I really hated this. That was awful. Never coming back. I hope your dog runs away. Okay, whatever. I actually had someone say that to me once. Yeah, it was rough. So, so the problem with this is it attracts some respondents more than others. All right? And we definitely found that in the restaurant. We found that the type of people you tended to miss with a comment card is people who are just kind of like, yeah, it was fine. It was okay. Don't know if I'd come back. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. That's the kind of person who probably doesn't sit there and say, I'm going to take 5 minutes and fill this little comment card out, right? So the danger with this is you miss certain types of people. And sometimes those are the people you want to be more worried about, right? If 80% of your customers leave going, it was okay, I guess, that's a problem, right? You want people to leave going, yeah, I'd definitely come back.
So why did you become a teacher and not teach in restaurant stuff?
So I loved restaurant work. I always did both. I was teaching and working in a restaurant. You can't compare the hours. I used to show up at like, I'd finish teaching and go right to the restaurant, and I wouldn't get home till like 4 a.m. Those are long days, and I had little kids. So once my wife was done being a student and she was actually working and making money, it was a good time for me to do one job, just one. That seemed nice. So now I do one job. I think one of these summers I'm going to go back and put a summer in because I do kind of miss it. But anyway. But to be honest, this is the spoiled thing about being a teacher. I get a paycheck all summer right now for doing nothing.
If you work,
And that's kind of hard to compete with.
tax on
Yeah, well, sure, I'm going to pay more taxes. But it is kind of, it's this very weird thing of being like, man, I have 2 months off and I'm getting, I'll never forget my first paid summer as a teacher. It was just not this summer we just had, but the one before. My first time being on contract as a teacher. So it's the first time getting like a summer paycheck. It's like, this is unbelievable. I just spent 2 weeks like riding bikes with my kids and there's my paycheck. It was crazy. It's very, very strange. I still feel quite spoiled by it. So anyway, and just think, one day you'll have it. Sorry.
How would they pay you by the classes you already have?
So you know what they actually do? This is nothing to do with this, but if you've ever wondered, we don't get paid through the summer. Actually, we get paid per day we teach. So as a teacher, you work 192 days in a year. We have a daily rate. So we get paid our daily rate times 192 days times, and actually it's a period rate. So we get paid per class we teach. Does that make sense? It's like a teacher who teaches 2 classes gets paid 2/3 as much as a teacher who teaches 3. So we just get paid by days we work. But our agreement with the school board is they take that whole amount, they add it all up, and then they just cut it into 24 paychecks. And so instead of paying us just while we're working, the agreement we have with them is they'll spread that payment out through the year. Does that kind of make sense? So like if I miss an unpaid day, like say I wanted to, yeah, and you can do that. Like say I wanted to take my kids to Disneyland and I wanted to go over a weekend but stay 2 extra days. I could apply for 2 unpaid days and they'd say yes. I'd take my kids there. I would lose 2 190 seconds of my pay. Like your pay is based on however many days you actually teach. So we don't actually get paid for the summer. We just take the pay we get during the school year and stretch it through the summer. And they basically do that because we can't be trusted to manage our own money and like not be bankrupt in the summer. So we've asked them to like take our money and spread it out. But our pay is actually just based on what we work. Anyway, if you've ever wondered, now you know. Okay, now a simple random sample. What does random mean? Anyone. Yeah. So a simple random sample is randomly choose people to survey. And everyone has an equal chance. So you could do this like by a lottery, right? Like you could put everyone's name in a hat and just say, I'm going to ask 30 people. So you shake up the hat, you pull 30 names out. Does that make sense? It's a random sample. I would probably design a computer program because that'd be quicker, right? Where I'd take the school class lists and I'd just say, hey, randomly pick 30 people from that list, and boom, we'd spit 30 names out. And then I would probably screw the computer program up because I'm not very good at programming computers. And I'd probably end up like with the same name 4 times and then go, crap, I don't know what to do. Then I'd probably go across the hall and say, Alfred, can you help me with this? And he'd go, yeah, I guess. And then he'd fix it for me and that'd be all good. So that's how that would work. But there we go. So a simple random sample, we just randomly choose whom to ask, completely randomly. Everyone has an equal chance. What would that look like at Eastdale? How could we do that? But even then, we're still within a single class. If I wanted to randomly ask about everyone at Eastdale,
Ask people in the hallway.
but even then, everyone doesn't have an equal chance because the kids who are in those 5 classes you pick now have a higher chance than the people in the other classes.
Ask anybody in the hallway.
But then I'm selecting for people in the hallway. What if somebody doesn't go in the hallway?
Like do an example, sir.
And some people get help at lunch. They're in the classrooms. Some people play sports. But even then, not everyone has an equal chance because then if I'm in a smaller class, I'm more likely to get picked than somebody in a big class. Okay, this could work. I could do,
Assembly.
yeah, so I could pick people at a whole school assembly. That's one way.
Yeah.
And I pick randomly. I literally just say like, you know, everyone gets a number on the way in. That's one thing we could do. That's a lot of work, but we could do it. I would probably just say, I would just look at the list of students, right? You guys all have numbers. You all have student numbers. So I'd just look at the school list and I'd randomly pick. So does it matter what class you're in? No. Does it matter if you like sports or hate sports? You're still on the school list. Good grades, bad grades, still on the school list. Skip a lot, attend a lot, still on the school list. Does that make sense? So the easiest way to get a random sample from a school would just be to take a list of all the students and then pick from that randomly. Does that make sense? Because all the other ways we had involve people who've already grouped themselves in one way or another. Think about that. Lunch, do you not group yourself? Surely you don't think you're randomly distributed. Like, are you as likely to spend lunch with like one of those grade 9 boys as you are with your friends? Of course not, right? So of course you group yourselves. Now, is this a fair way to sample? What do you think? Yeah. Yeah, this is pretty fair. It's pretty fair. It's definitely the most fair method we've come up with now, though types of people could be randomly missed. And I'll give an example. There was, in the last presidential election in the United States, which I still try not to think about it because it was a traumatic event for some people, i.e. me. But in the last election in the United States, there was one poll in California, which, and this is true, there's a really interesting thing. It was a poll put on by the LA Times. At the beginning of the election, 50 people, and then every week they would ask them their opinion on the election. Does that make sense? So the idea was to get a sense how people's opinions were changing over time. Does that make sense? Can you picture that? So they picked 250 people and they asked them over and over and over again. And they picked them totally randomly. So it was done from the population of California. They picked random phone numbers and kept calling until they got people to commit to this survey for X number of weeks. And they paid them some money for their participation to make sure they wouldn't drop out, and they surveyed them every week. Fun fact, they did this randomly, and in the random sample, they had 3 African Americans. 3. So 3 black people. And here's the problem. One of them was a Trump supporter. So according to this survey, week after week after week after week, what percentage of African Americans in California supported Trump? 33. Had to be, right? The real number in California ended up being, it was 6. Did you know that, or was that a random guess? Yeah, that's the correct guess. 6. 94% of African Americans voted against Donald Trump, and 6% voted for, based on exit polling. So, what was the problem with this sample? It was randomly chosen. There wasn't enough people, and so not by any malice, not because anyone was trying to spew things, but just randomly, they had too small a group of African Americans to get an accurate sample. Does that make sense? So the only danger with random sampling is that you may randomly exclude a group. And if you think about it, say you were doing random polling in Canada and you wanted to get information on the Amish. Are there a lot of Amish people in Canada? Does anyone know who the Amish are?
Yeah, I know there's a house on a road.
Amish is like they have their own like cult. They're not technology.
Yeah, that's it. They don't they don't believe in modern technology. Sorry? Yeah, there's communities all around. And so you'll see them with like horses and buggies, and they prepare all their own food, and they don't have electricity in their homes, they don't have telephones.
And they don't have like the young kids, they have apparently
Oh wow, I didn't know that. So, point being, if I did a random sample, am I liable to get a lot of that group in my random sample? Probably not, right? So, that leads us to an even better kind of sampling called stratified. All right? And in stratified sampling, did you skip one? Okay. In stratified sampling, we divide the population into groups and sample randomly from each group. So we divide people into groups, and then we sample from within those groups to make sure that each group is represented. This, by the way, is how most major polling companies work. So if you're at home and you get a phone call poll, they are trying to make sure that they get proper representation of all the major demographic groups in Canada, by income, by age, by race, by religion, whatever it may be they're looking at. So for example, if I were going to do stratified sampling at Eastdale, what would that look like? What groups would I want to be thinking about at Eastdale? Yeah, so I'm probably not going to base it on race necessarily, though I could, certain things, but like certain races I'd have a tough time finding people to sample. That was like I taught at the only whiter school in the DSBN before this, which was South Lincoln, and we had like 2 kids who weren't white, and that was it. That was all. Yeah, you don't have a lot of these still. Yeah, you just don't realize it, right? Yeah, absolutely. But at Eastdale, somebody said the groups I probably would be interested in. Grade 9, grade 10, grade 11, grade 12, and probably boys, girls, yeah, 12B, 12C, 12D, no, yeah.
There's a 12C?
No. Right, and so I would divide my survey up into these groups: grade 9 boys, grade 9 girls, grade 12 boys, grade 12 girls, so on and so forth, all the different categories. And I would try to make sure I got people from each group. Does that make sense? And so maybe if I was going to survey just 24 people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 groups. So maybe I'd say I'm going to survey 30 people, but I'm going to try to get 3 people from each of these groups so that I've hit every demographic at the school. Does that make sense? That's kind of a stratified sample. Obviously, if my question were different, my groups might look different. If I was interested only in grade 10s, then I'd just have 2 groups, right? Maybe boys and girls, or maybe I'd group them by academic and applied, right? There's lots of different ways we could do it. Academic, applied, essential, whatever. Lots of different ways we could group it. This is just one example. Does that make sense? Just one example. Boys, girls, and grade. And this is usually viewed as more fair. Opinions are less likely to get missed. Did I put 2 P's?
Yeah.
Is it 1 P?
Yeah.
Is it 1 P, 2 N's? Is that right?
N-I-O-N-S.
That looks so weird. That's right?
Yeah.
Huh.
Just think of onions with P-I.
I think I have a rule with double letters, which is when in doubt, I just make everything a double letter.
With recommended, it's like 4 M's.
Oh, recommended, I wouldn't even want to try. Is it 1 C, 2 M's?
I'm pretty sure you know. Like those are.
It's 5.
It's the word.
Recommended? 1 C, 1 M?
No, there's in the one.
See, I don't know. Happened? That one, I'm fine with that. That's 2 P's. Like that. Okay, and the last example, is one that it's in the textbook, it's in the curriculum, we have to learn it. It's a weird one. And I've never told, maybe you can do a little research and help explain this one to me. I've never quite understood the usefulness of the cluster sample. It's the same idea. Here's what we do. We divide the population into groups. And then we randomly choose which groups to survey. So this is like your recommendation for classes, where the class has already divided the school population into groups, right? Like you are a group of kids right now, across the hall there's a group of kids. So we randomly choose which groups to survey. So this would be like randomly picking classes to survey. Here's what I don't know, and I spent some time trying to read, and I couldn't find a good answer. My instinct is that this is just done for convenience as well. I'm curious to know if there's some benefit to this way of surveying that I'm not aware of. I can't think of it, because obviously it would be easy to miss people here. But the idea is we divide the population into groups, and then we just randomly pick which groups we're going to take. So I'm going to put a question mark here for good survey, because I'm actually a little curious about it. I'm going to do a little bit more reading. I feel like it'd be easy to miss people here, but I could be wrong. Yeah. And then the last thing I want to know is, what is a census? Has anyone heard that word before, census? Yep. So a census, Okay, a census is when they give out a survey, but in Canada at least, and I believe in the United States, when they send a census to your home, is it optional? No, you got to fill it out. That's the law. You have a legal requirement. And to whom do they send it? Yeah, but even then, if you're under 18, it still gets sent to you. It just gets sent to your guardians. Does that make sense? It still gets filled out on your behalf. So when they do a census, it is the whole population is surveyed. So a census is when the entire population is surveyed. So if we were to do a census of the school, every single kid in the school would fill a survey out. Have you ever done those before? I know when I was in high school, we had a couple that we had to do. Everyone had to go to a computer lab and fill out a survey. Yeah, and everyone does them, right? Yeah. Or like they do the school climate survey, right? Do you guys all fill that out? Is that everybody? Okay, so I want you guys to take a few minutes and work through on the next page, example 1 and example 2. Oh, no problem. You want another one? Yeah, you bet. Of course. Good, how are you? What? Come on. He's making a reading. You messed me up. I know I are. Population problem? Downtown. You mean like when you start talking related. Wow, down here I didn't think of that.
No, it's residents.
Nice.
Right?
Let's go.
City well.
City
well.
No.
I did everything.
No, I did. I never had.
Let's kiss it now.
No, he looks good.
Yeah, no. I like
You like this, bro? You squeeze it, bro. It's just- Please don't worry, I got this, boys. Your car.
On.
I'm gonna go sit here. You don't want to get shit and vegetables?
Yeah.
We will sit. That's horrible.
You know, I like this. I like this joke. No, it's like, wow. No, it's Chris. Why? It's like, because he thinks you're half transformer and you just.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I filled out
stop
the 2016
transforming into a-
census when I was 16.
I'm like, they don't
They
care.
believe you have to be.
You stop
Like he was going to church. Oh, we're at
It's like publicity, bro. Just every time away, bro. Can't change the matter.
really want to get like it's dad's like, yeah, screw it.
Tadpole and frog.
Okay.
Everything.
The place is.
Let's go. I just need sign it and place. It's easy. No, I haven't seen it down just I'm sold or
It's like this was like the Widowmaker itself. Why would they do that? Yeah, it's like exactly.
a goal is like
Let's gotta get done. Keep going. No, that's not one of the options.
it says a rate
Keep going.
John, what's the answer? John, what's the answer?
Well, and
Yeah, it'll get nice and quiet.
Okay.
When I actually worked first, when I was a child, I could actually. If I wrote, oh, I don't
I feel like probably like there's an argument for both.
This is a little bit of a dirty
Anyone that you could end up in one, right?
Should it be the one?
But I would like both. That's interesting.
I have the.
These aren't just articles, this is party that's us. If I own a business.
that one's good.
How about this?
I'm not a driver, I might know.
I used to favorite.
Take a second. There's a lot of good arguments you made.
I will just.
There might be a question. Write your name. Well, there's 50 Austria.
You guys have a I did it. think I'll get this right now.
Well, you sure this class or old one? Old like this classroom.
I like this one. Yeah, and for science, obviously, it's tremendous, right? It's nice
What
to
about
have
this class?
How many people are
just for that.
What do you think?
Favorite moments, but I like you guys.
What do you think? What's that? Pretty bad.
Yeah. My second time having Tim. Enjoy both of them.
Can't wait to go. I'm not a troublemaker like you. Is Hunter L your favorite kind of student? Quiet, doesn't talk,
No.
it's
I'm fine.
Yeah, it's always lost my mind. I don't know what
Bro, get
I don't know.
What question?
This is example 2. It'd be, I know the sampling method would be voluntary for that because they put it in an online survey.
So at a bare minimum, because they're interested in people in Buffalo, right?
Yes.
But no matter what, the sample may be big or small, but it is limited to what? They post an online survey on their website. So who is the sample got to be limited to?
People like in Buffalo.
People in Buffalo, but specifically people who go to their
radio station.
people who go to the radio station website
Yes.
and sign in, right? So that's the sample. The sample is people who go to the website and then say, yeah, I'll click there. So the sample would be people who visit the website and take the survey. I don't know. You tell me.
I think
Yeah.
it would be biased. This is a thinking question.
This is a thinker, this one.
This is very interesting. This is more like a university question.
No, what? Oh,
This is called.
did you honestly just pull that? I'll knock you out. Hear that, Miss Sargent? I meant it. I always assume they just sit in the office and listen to my lessons. That's what I'd do. I figure I've got to be the most entertaining teacher in this building. And not in a good way, but in the train wreck kind of
You're
way.
gonna kick someone in the throat.
I have never said that. I mean, it might happen, but I've never said it. Hey, what do we think? What do we think? Show me. What do you got?
Yeah, Chris. All right.
Qu'est-ce que c'est?
Psycho killer.
Qu'est-ce que c'est? Okay. All right, gentlemen. Phones away. Let's see this. What do you got? Let's talk. Okay, let's talk, team. So our first situation. Niagara Region wants to determine people's opinions on parking availability in downtown Welland. They decide to conduct a survey. So I heard some good fighting going on for A, and I liked everyone's thinking. What do we think the population for this problem is? Okay, so somebody might say residents of Welland. And I think that's a good answer, in as much as if we're talking about parking in Welland, sure, we might be more concerned with Welland. On the other hand, people may say all of Niagara. That's a reasonable reason too, especially if, as maybe part of what they want to think about is, hey, Are we getting people to come in and do shopping in Welland? Are people coming to the Seaway Mall? And so if you're worried about getting people to come into your town to do shopping or to visit attractions, then maybe you want to ask everyone about parking. Maybe if you get people who say, oh, I would come into Welland, but I hate parallel parking and it's all street parking in this town. Right? And that makes me nervous. When I was in, I didn't get a lot of traveling until I'm entering my traveling stage in life, which I'm excited about. So a couple of years ago, my wife and I went to Paris, which was great. It was really good. But fun fact, when they parallel park in Paris, you know what they do? They leave just enough space for a car. So then when the next car pulls in, just nudges that car and backs up and nudges that car. And they just hit the car in front and behind them like 5 times to parallel park and like squeak their way in there. And then when the next guy goes to leave, he has to like back into that car and pull it. It's crazy. They just hit each other constantly. Low speed, but it's not how we do it. If you did that here, people would like come out of stores and start freaking out, right? That's just how they do it though.
No, they're sunflower.
So there you go. I heard somebody mention. I heard at least one person say drivers in Welland. Yeah, I like that. Well, it depends on the question you're asking, right? If the question we're asking is, what do drivers think of parking? Then that's your population, right? On the other hand, yeah, you may want to know for business. Maybe you don't want to know from drivers at all. Maybe you're only interested in asking business owners, right? Hey, do you think the parking by your store is reasonable? Do you think that if we had more parking, you'd be able to get more business? There's no right or wrong answer to this. Does that make sense?
No, we all.
You can all have different answers. Good Lord. You can all have different answers and they can all be correct. Nothing wrong with that. Ooh, no, I will. I don't think I've done my attendance in about a week in this class. I get a lot of emails about it, and then they'll say, like, I need your attendance from, like, 2 Tuesdays ago, and I'll be like, I think everyone was here. Like, I shouldn't be admitting to this, but whatever, it's true.
Next thing you know, the PA was on the whole time.
I think she's on to me. I could be wrong. I think she's got me figured out. Because every time I walk by, she just looks disappointed. Not even angry anymore, just like, Orlando.
So just go and sign in at the office.
No, it's my job. I'll figure it out. Anyway, let's talk about this. I want to know what type of sampling each of these is. If I just left questionnaires for people to pick up at various locations and fill out if they're interested in, that would be voluntary.
Biased.
All right, and we think that is probably more biased. Yeah. I use a random number generator to select people from a phone book. What's that?
Simple random.
Yeah, that's simple random. Is that biased? It's probably not, right? It's probably pretty fair. At least mostly. Or mostly, if you prefer. There we go. Yeah, I think that's mostly fair. I choose a random page from the phone book and sample every household on that page. Oh, so I pick a random page, but then I call the whole page. No. So first of all, that's definitely biased, right? But what kind of sample is it? Good. Yeah, that's a cluster. In this case, the grouping is just done by the phone book, right? By the way, it occurs to me I made this question, and I'm only now thinking, hands up if you've seen a phone book in your life.
Yeah. When I used to deliver papers.
Do you still have one in your house? Do you still get them?
Whenever I'd see phone book.
See, there you go. Okay, well, anyway. Now, they don't have cell phones in there now, though, do they? Like, it still doesn't have cell numbers, does it? No? So that's pretty useless then, really. Okay. And then what about survey people who are shopping downtown? Okay, so we agree that's probably biased. Especially if we're interested in finding people who maybe didn't go downtown because of the parking. Is it a good idea to survey people who are downtown? No, because obviously we didn't get the people who didn't, right? But what kind of surveying would this be? Definitely. Convenience.
What is downtown Holland? Like where?
So you would probably be better to ask that than I, but my thinking would be like down East Main, like by the courthouse and like the walk there, and like the RBC's there, and there's the Thai place.
But then I think like Niagara Street or like
Niagara
Road.
I don't think it's
busier.
They're busier, but they're not downtown. That's like my hometown, Niagara Falls, which, oh, what a town. It's so terrible. But we have this super busy tourist district, right? That's not our downtown. Our downtown is like Queen Street, Niagara. No, the Falls isn't downtown Niagara. Our downtown is like the old Queen Street where nobody ever goes except like people looking to. And actually, it's cleaned up a bit in the last few years. They put some new shops. But like when I was a kid, downtown Niagara Falls, Queen Street, Niagara Falls was like 27 empty, shuttered up businesses, and that's it. Right? Like it was nothing. And now they've done some work and have had some time reopen it. So it's not the case that the busiest part of a city is its downtown. In fact, often in the era of malls, right, when they started opening malls and things like that, downtown started emptying out because instead of going one place where you could walk all over the place outside in the rain to get from store to store, they all of a sudden invented these places where you could just go walk around inside. Well, where would you go? And they have a food court, and they have this or that, right? So malls really kind of hurt downtowns in the past. Exactly, right? That's your mall? I've never been. Well, I played a gig there once, so I've stood outside playing music once, but I've never.
Like at the eatery?
Yeah, but I've never actually gone to any of the stores. It was like the best gig I've ever done. It was it paid a stupid amount of money, and it was only like 2.5 hours. That's the end of my story. New York is really great. I'm glad. Okay. Okay, gentlemen. Second example. We're a year away from yet another election in the United States. So let's say, not presidential, but the midterm elections, yeah. Local radio station in Buffalo, maybe WBFO. WBFO, Buffalo. It's a real station. So let's say we have a local radio station, and they put an online survey. And the question is, who will you vote for in the upcoming federal election? Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, or other? They record results for a week and then write a news report on who they expect to win in our area. Not running, but anyway. Who's the population in this problem? Who do they want to know about? Yeah, residents of Buffalo. But who's their sample? Who is their sample? So they want to know about the residents of Buffalo. Good. So listeners, and not just listeners, but listeners who go on the website and exactly. Listeners who go on the website and click on the survey. Now, let's say, by the way, that this is like an adult contemporary station that plays like all like top 40 from the 80s. Are they going to get representatives of everyone from Buffalo? Or if it's a country music station? What kind of voter are they probably going to get? What if it's a hip-hop station? Probably going to get a different sample of voters, right? What if it's a news radio station? Like, what if it's just talk radio?
Nothing but old guys.
Yeah, you're going to get different types of people, right? So what do you think? Is this sample biased?
Yes.
Yeah. What's the sampling method?
Voluntary.
Yeah, it's voluntary. And I would say, if anything, it takes the worst of voluntary and the worst of convenience. Does that make sense? Not only is it I think it's right. Convenience. Yeah, that's right. It's a weird word. This really takes the worst of both, doesn't it? Because it's a voluntary survey, so not everyone has to take it. But it's also just the laziest way because they just stuck it on their own website and they advertise it on their own radio show, right? So you're already getting a limited number of people just that way. Now, on the other hand, isn't it? It's weird that they all say the number one, which makes you wonder, like.
But like, same with like anything, like toothpaste, all 4 of the doctors say that they like it.
My friend was the bass player in a band called The Fifth Dentist once, and I thought that was pretty funny. That's the end of my story. But you're right; they all seem to say like 4 out of 5 dentists recommend our brand. I think if you're going to be in a band, the most important thing is having a good name.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's not bad, right? The Rainbow Butt Monkeys? Yeah. Yeah, I used to see them. Oh, gosh. Proving my age here, I used to always go see shows at a place called Front 54 in Welland, which is now called what? Which is now the Moose and Goose in Thorold. In Thorold, not Welland, in Thorold. Sorry? Yeah, it used to be called Front 54. Now it's a place called the Moose and Goose. But anyway, I used to always go see bands there. Anyway.
Is it on River Road?
Which? Oh, I don't even know. I think it's on Front Street because it used to be called Front 54 because its address is, wait for it, 54 Front Street, right? Really clever. Anyway. Okay. Last 2 things we're going to do. One, this is real data. I got this from this year's enrollment data.
There's only 79 grade 11.
Yeah. The 12s are inflated because that includes 12 Bs, but that's okay. So I want you to do 2 things. One, I want you to imagine that we're doing a stratified random sample of students at Eastdale, but instead of surveying everybody, we're just going to survey 100 people. How would I do it so that it matches these numbers best? All right? Not going to be perfect, but I want you to try to come up with the most fair stratified sample you can. So that's part 1. Part 2, I want you to start thinking you and a partner are going to do some surveying this week, and you're going to use the data that you get from your survey throughout this unit. Does that make sense? So if you do a crappy job on this, it's going to make the rest of your unit miserable because you're going to have crummy numbers to work with. So you have 2 tasks. 1, I want you to answer this question. But 2, I want you to think of 2 survey questions you could ask that both have nice numerical answers. Does that make sense? I want questions that you can ask people where the answers are numbers. Does that make sense? Because you're going to have to go around and do a survey where you're going to get at least 40 people, and the answers to at least 2 questions, you can have more if you want, but a minimum of 2 questions, the answers to your questions have to be numerical. They have to be numbers. For example, I could say, how many pets do you have at home? That has a numerical answer, right? The answer is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I said, what's your favorite animal? Is that a numerical answer? No. On the other hand, if I said on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like cats? Does that have a numerical answer? Yes. Does that make sense? You can ask about whatever you want, but you have to design the survey so that you're going to get numbers as an answer. Does that make sense? So in the time that remains, I want you to work out the answer to this. And then if you finish that, you can start thinking about later on this week, with whom am I going to work? What kind of questions are we going to ask? And then specifically, how are we going to do our sampling to make sure we get a fair sample? And that's important. Because we're actually going to have to go on and do this. Sorry? Yep.
It's more than I thought.
That includes students who are at alternate settings. So if somebody's like at the Bridge program or the RISE program, then they're considered a part of our student body. So it actually includes a lot of people who aren't in the building every day.
Is that the special needs department?
This includes that, even though again, and this I think.
I didn't know like that.
Yeah, but they're not all getting the SSD. They're all getting the diploma, but they're still in the numbers. Yeah.
Is it true that they're here until like 21?
Is what?
Is it true that they're here until like 21?
Oh, I know it's older. I wanted to say it was 19. Maybe it is 21. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, and How old was Johnny last year? Johnny always plays guitar.
I see him walking around. This paper's on my house.
Oh, does he? He's a great guy. I really like him. And he was older too.
Homer was 19 when he graduated.
Everyone do one.
Are they gonna be doing this? Oh, yes.
Yeah, I don't know how.
I don't like your
Anyway, I gave you a piece of gum before.
Because I gave one back. You said that twice now. So yeah.
Well, then who's gonna come and represent?
I
Yeah,
can't
you
go.
guys, come on.
I'm
a dentist.
There should be more 12s asked than grade 11.
Bro, you can't even have them.
Neither can you.
Bro, do you want us to split it?
That is wrong. Go take my force. You too.
That's
No,
rude.
you go.
No, I don't want it.
Now, you could ask. Whoa,
Look at Hunter, dude.
whoa. You could alternate. You could say,
Hunter, my page.
you know, like grade 9 and the last one.
You just got great.
12.
Just can't do my work all
Can't say that.
Grade
Why?
9 and the last
Why?
16 girls.
It's true though.
You can
I've
just
already
say that.
straight by new bombs. Welcome to right. I want to read by those. It's fun.
It's fun.
Yeah. That's so weird. You know the password?
Yeah, I do.
Do you?
What's the password, Jim? Oh, you do? Oh, that's nice.
Oh, yeah.
Because there has to be.
They can spell it with keyboard.
One.
Oh, thanks.
Why would you?
might be the only person to do that.
My password is G.
No, I was gonna do a messed up one.
Now, I guess the only exception would be if there's
Like where it's like a staircase on both sides. Got this one.
So we got this never copy off this whole
We're gonna get fucked. We're gonna be like, I'm on number 1.
Always coming. Take it to the ear, dude. Look at it. Go back. You see everybody with that.
Oh my god.
Good. You're good.
Shot. Let's go. Shot. Here. You go first.
Yeah.
Go first. Right here. Go. Shot right here. You live in a trailer.
What?
You live in a trailer.
Oh,
He lives in a trailer. He keeps NASCAR. How to feel?
It doesn't hurt.
It's already. Because during the summer, when I was in the corner, let's go. 1. You can play like 2 like that. 2. No, 2. I go. One
Or you know,
let's go.
Dude, no way, I don't want to be that compared.
Tyler,
I'm a mid-crisis. Like, hey, yo.
Tyler, are you going to date?
Stop. Alright, 1 piece.
Okay, good.
Stop. 1 piece
I was gonna hook you up with Brody here.
Hey, Taylor. You want to hook up? Tim puts up his good. Hold on. Overall Hunter. Taylor. That's just a grown overall Hunter. That's my shitty for Halloween. Go hug, dude. I know.
Yes.
I'm being a cop.
I'm fine.
There we go. Wrong. You did that right there.
Really?
He tried killing me.
We're doing shot for shot, and I hit him once, he hit me twice. I was like, yo, I'll give you another one. He's like, I'll give you another piece of gum. You don't hit him.
No, because last time we did that, you actually hurt the fuck out of that dog.
Ready? Go.
I would actually, I would smile so much at her.
Especially with Gene Jackman.
She like snapped. Yeah, my pencil case.
Yo.
Fair skin.
That's not.
You're right in the ear.
Oh, do it. No, do it. No.
Give him an Indian sunburn.
Yo,
No, John, I will honestly.
Bro,
It's on your head.
You're not 3 years old.
You take out just
Bro, are you trying to jerk off my arm? I'm trying to get it.
Stop grabbing pencils, you cheater. I'm holding it like this, bro. Every time you gotta hit the desk, bro. You're basketball, bro. It's not gonna hurt.
I was that's the problem.
He's trying to like see some rough stuff with me. He's trying to do some rough stuff with me.
Rough stuff with me.
I got him in Indian rugby. He's trying to get an Indian rugby somewhere else.
Yeah.
Stop.
I should have seen confused, bro.
Ow. Tim, you can take that?
Don't take it from Tim.
John, you hurt yourself.
Yeah, I like hit you weird.
I'm not gonna hurt you.
I think you're good.
Why not?
Because you'll get cheese, bro. That's what happens. You think you're funny? I need it. You know we're part of the season. Oh
I'll take it. So I'm gonna get caught for how and call myself content.
No, you gotta get a badge and say content.
Yeah, you sure?
Okay, whoa.
Sit down.
Anybody want some?
You guys can be sitting wherever you want, but be sitting, please. We're not up in a boot. So, Rochelle, here's my insight. Also, are we thinking about survey questions and whether we are going to sample? Because whatever you come up with, you are going to have to defend your sampling method as a good sampling method.
I'll beat the crap out of anybody who tries to do
It's not a good sampling method.
But I still do.
Maybe
No,
it's a great
that's my
sampling
protection.
method.
Seems like
But I don't, I'm a pacifist.
seems fine.
Well, we have to talk about answer box.
Touch my shit again. So you can send that bottle's going down. Wanna is that? Wait a minute. Get closer. Whoa! He's actually about to throw hands. Throw his hands. Ooh. You guys are usually in the
John's good.
I would say I like and if I wanted to do this,
And that's arguably the same thing as this.
that is a rational function. It's not asymptotic.
Discontinuable, I'm sorry, I'm not.
You got Stop. Starts again.
I'm so confused.
Just don't touch.
I live in a feather.
I was like, oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. Jonathan. Okay, 3 things. 1, don't I want you sitting. So sit. All y'all. Come on. At the table. Sit. I'm sitting. John laughed. Sitting.
John just left.
Okay, that's okay. So I would appreciate it if we have a little bit of time at the end of class to get some work done. And we start getting work done. And if your work's done, I'm fine with that. But I'm not trying to be a zookeeper here. I'm trying to be a teacher, which means that if you've got free time because you've done what you need to be done, I respect that. I'm fine with that. Spend it sitting, and if you want to chat with people next to you, do so. You want to check your email, check your email. You want to tweet, I don't know. But do so in a way where we're not up and all over the place. I think that's just respectful. I think that's reasonable. A reasonable request, yeah?
Yes.
I thought you'd say that. Bunderson, have a great day. Thank you very much. You as well.